Hi everyone, thanks for coming, and thank you to the cinema here for programming this kind of alternative film work. And my name is Bill Mousoulis, and I'm one of the presenters and curators of this series of films, which goes under the banner of Unknown Pleasures, which, like I said, just tries to highlight under-recognised and alternative film. Just quick acknowledgements. I'd also like to thank the traditional owners of this country who allow us to live, work and play here after 250 years of abuse against them. My respects to the Wurundjeri elders and my love and solidarity with all Indigenous people. This program of Nick Ostrovskis films is programmed by Dirk de Bruyn, who's here. Special guest programmer, and he'll be doing a bit more of stuff. Is it working?
Is it working?
Yeah, it's working. So you go for it, Dirk.
Well, thanks, Bill. And of course, this goes back to the good old 80s. And even though it's Super 8, there's a lot of other things happening here.
It's not working.
It's not working? Oh!
Not that close.
Louder. Anyway, so as a way of introduction, I mean, I had a little pocket of money that I started to kind of left at Memory Lab to kind of transfer films, especially Super 8 and some 16, that seem to have become lost, you know, because there's a whole generation of filmmakers from the 80s and 90s who have kind of been swept aside, you know, through a lot of the institutions around, and kind of this is my response to trying to change that and bring some of those things back. And it's great to start that project, which I call the Shoring Project, as sort of shoring up our historical past, our Melbourne past, you know, with Nick's work. Because he was did a lot of work in the 80s. Just about every open screenings at the Super 8 group that I went to, there'd be a piece that Nick did, because he was just so prolific and so, you know, testing the boundaries all the time. So that's my background for putting this together. I'll let Nick say a few words.
This is Nick himself. Yeah.
Hi, thanks everybody for coming. It's been a long time since I've shown anything, and just can you hear me? Yeah, it's just a long time since I've seen the films too, and this sort of brings it all back. Like this image here. Oh, who's that? I don't know him.
That's Nick at my place.
That's
about 25 years back.
At your place, all right.
Yeah.
Don't recognise him. Yeah, this is sort of an image, but I used to work at the government laboratories in the city on the 16th floor, and I had to get work. Centrelink made me get work, and I said I wasn't interested in I wanted to sort of spend my time just making films, and being an artist. like I was sort of led astray by Bill a bit at that time, and I heard there was this job, and I only became interested when I heard it was on the 16th floor of a city building. Otherwise, I wasn't really interested. And then I had this sort of image of doing time-lapse shots in this building on the 16th floor. It's a laboratory job within the public service, and I stayed there for about 4 years and made a few films there. And that's an image from a film called Man in the Window. This guy was sort of struggling with a demolition job in Williamstown, and he's sort of knocking off this. I don't think that's going to be shown, so I won't talk about that one.
Yeah,
is that shown?
No, it is. I think.
Yeah.
Is that going to be shown?
Yeah, definitely.
He was there for about 2 hours, knocking this sort of window out of this sort of this frame, and I was sort of there time-lapsing him. Enjoyed the program.
We'll talk about it at the end. So we've got a Q&A of Dirk and Nick, and just a shout out also to Memory Lab, to Callum for doing the transfers like Super 8 to high def or 4K digital, actually. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing to say is a lot of the films are silent.
Yes.
But there's a musicality to the silence. Okay?
And also just content warning, you know, there's like very fast and zooms in, and just for anyone that's a little sensitive with all that kind of stuff, I'll take it. Thanks, everyone. I just want to say that was amazing. Firstly, Callum for the transfers, Dirk for the idea for this incredible project of reviving these Super 8 films.
And Bill for putting it on.
I'm nothing. And Nick for the incredible work. I got a blast looking at that. Well done, Nick. that is
Is
extraordinary.
this mic working? No.
Yeah, it is.
Is it? I can't tell.
No, that doesn't seem to be working very well.
It's not working, it's working, it's not.
Maybe not.
Hello. Well, this one's quite clear.
Okay, well, I can yell.
Can
I can yell. It's probably the button.
It's not on. Yep. Hello. Nick, come and take a seat if you like.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just going to ask a few questions and then maybe, give you a chance to ask him, Nick, some questions as well. I'm hoping, that he'll motor on this, thinking about looking back on this. But I wanted to start, Nick, by just saying, how did you start? What was the beginning? How did you move into this kind of area?
Well, it's back in 82 when I started. In 81 I was working in, what was I doing in 81? I was still doing sort of fine art painting at home. Closer? Yeah, okay, thanks. And at that time I had no intention of ever making films. It just was, the thought didn't enter my mind. It had to be sort of something, some sort of input from outside, like you say, something that got me started.
Mm.
And at 1981, there's nothing there. I wouldn't have imagined that I would have spent the next sort of 20 years making films. No way. But in 82, I was doing a course at Paran TAFE, Foundation Year Art and Design, and they had a sort of Super 8 subjects. So I wasn't really interested in it then. And I was going to sort of night classes at RMIT, fine art painting, so it overloaded. And I didn't really enjoy the sort of formal classes at Paran TAFE or RMIT, except for sort of like one subject, life drawing. And at that time, in probably mid-82, Chris Knowles, he was an artist on campus at Paran, at RMIT. So the light's a bit bright for me. That's why I got this. With all this animation, I damaged the cornea of the top of my eye, so I can't really sort of look at bright lights anymore. But so okay now, but I can't have sort of bright lights going into my face. So that's what with this.
No worries.
What was I saying about Chris? In 82, I was doing a fine art painting course at RMIT, sort of in the evenings, and also I got a job at Perfect Cheese as a lab assistant at school. I was sort of I was sort of good at science and art and stuff like that. So I got a job as a lab assistant at Perfect Cheese. Didn't do any sort of formal training in sort of science or anything. But at that time too, a lot of things were happening in my life. Chris Knowles was artist on campus at RMIT, and he's putting around all these posters around the place at RMIT saying Sight for Sore Eyes, Super 8, and he was advertising Super 8 workshops and Super 8 screenings around the RMIT campus. And at that time I saw one of his films, City Melody, and it absolutely blew me away. I've never seen anything like it before. It wasn't done on Super 8, it was done on Standard 8, a sort of fairly rudimentary camera, sort of really basic bare bones type thing. And he went round Carlton and Fitzroy, and just took shots. It just sounds really simple, and he went up to the flats of the in Fitzroy housing commission flats and took shots of the dome of the exhibition buildings, and it looked like something out of Florence in Italy. It's a sort of low sun and the light coming through it. And with these images, he rephotographed the images so to really accentuate the grain and the grain structure of the film. And you had this sort of swirl. You can actually see the crystals. I saw the film in 1982 in I think Melbourne State College.
And you only saw it once, didn't
Once,
you?
I never saw it again. And it just sort of plays in my head. It's just the most powerful thing I ever heard. I saw and heard. It had that sort of visual part, and it's sort of like this sort of meta music. It's sort of that's what Maeve Wood said. The sort of the swirling grain, because he sort of processed. I don't know if he processed that film himself. And then he had his music, which is just another experience altogether. It sort of had, the music was really sort of like a kind of drone, and it's sort of like the music for me, it described the grain of the film. I think I mentioned to you that it's like sort of planets. A scientist says that planets like Jupiter and Saturn all have a particular sound. Well, it's like sort of Chris Knowles captured the sound of the grain, and it just sort of worked. It's just totally mesmerising for me. I could talk about this film for hours because I love it so much. But I've never seen it again since 1982, and I don't think I need to. It just plays in my head all the time.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful film.
Well, you know, I mean, a lot of your films are silent, but there is a sort of musicality to it.
Could be, yeah. Most of them are silent, yeah. And the other thing I did, Chris, you said what got me started. There's this film, Cine Melody. I did after I did his short course at RMIT, his workshop. It's just he's totally inspiring teacher. He's way better than any of the lecturers at RMIT. Sort of fine art course, apart from maybe the life drawing teacher Ted May, he was great. And all the teachers at Paran, Chris Knowles just sort of is an inspired teacher, and had sort of these students there that inspired me too, like this lady called Mary Garlick. She just shot this film, it's sort of like a cinema verite type film. She just walked around the streets like walking a dog with a camera, and she shot these really sort of strong images, and just a sort of first up film. But I don't think she ever made a film again. But still, that sort of inspired me to sort of take my camera to work. I was working at Perfect Cheese as a lab assistant, and I sort of at my morning and afternoon tea breaks, I'd take my camera around and sort of shoot around the street, and on my way home, sort of whenever I could. Mm-hmm. And what got me started? Another thing that got me started was Paul Winkler. You know, I saw his films advertised at the Longford Cinema. Is that better? Yeah, you can hear me better now.
Good, okay.
Longford Cinema in South Yarra. He showed his films, and I haven't seen his films again too. He showed Requiem, Sydney Harbour Bridge, which I first heard of. This is in 1983. Sydney Harbour Bridge, which I first heard of in the catalogue of I think the Sydney Biennale. It was shown in 81, and he had his film shown there, I think. I saw it somewhere, maybe somewhere else too. But and then another film, Requiem, Sydney Harbour Bridge, and the last film, and in the audience too, in the Longford, there were only about 3 or 4 people there, and they sort of steadily walked out. 4, 3, 2, 1, and I stayed. And I was really rewarded. He showed his last film as a Brick Wall. Absolute, wow. That's something else. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. You know, it's a great film. I don't know how it goes for 20 minutes. You said.
I can't remember.
I can't remember, but I saw it and it made a big impression for me.
It goes a bit too long for a lot of people.
A bit too long for a lot of people. I think maybe my films too, for a lot of people too. But
yeah, well, I mean,
and that brick wall, it's sort of just all that energy and a lot of amazing things happening there, and that sort of really inspired me. Again, just sort of like Chris's film, it just sort of swept me off my feet. You know, you don't sort of works of art like Chris Knowles' Cine Melody and Brick Wall swept me off my feet. Also, you made a film called Fires. That was really quite amazing in '79.
Oh yeah, yeah.
79.
Yeah, something like that. 79, probably.
I first met you at 83 at the Fringe Network open screenings, and I saw images of you in a film magazine.
Oh, right.
You in Holland, and the big sign saying Dirkstown.
Oh, that was...
there's a town called Dirkstown. There's a picture of you.
That's right. That was my son was standing in front of that, not me.
Was that your son?
Oh, well,
I thought...
might have been. But anyway, just getting back to your work, though, I mean, you mentioned Paul Winkler, and one of the things about Paul Winkler I find is that he has these images and then he takes them away from you and you can't quite settle on them. And there's a bit of that happening for you too in like things like family album and stuff. There's these sublime images, and yet it's not really about the images. It's about this kind of movement and taking things away and sort of moving in and moving out. I mean, especially in Brain Surge, I mean, you know, which Chris Knowles did the soundtrack for. Yeah. There is this kind of rhythm that you kind of work on, and it's sort of not completely about the images, but it's about some kind of movement. And sometimes it's unsettling, and sometimes it's kind of very relaxing, you know. And I'm kind of wondering, is that sort of reflects something about what the place that you lived, how the ambivalence of it, or you know, what do you think that expresses that agitation, if you like?
Could be. No one in my family is into my films at all. They can't stand it. No one. Mum, I asked my mum if she wanted to come, and she said no. She came and saw slide images once.
Right.
Not slide images, flower animation back in '89. But
maybe there's something
no
to the fact that you didn't want them to like it.
I don't know.
Right. And the other thing for me is that it's the western suburbs. You know, it's like almost like a diaristic sort of cacophony of images from the western suburbs, the Westgate Bridge before it's built, and you know those family shots remind me of a lot of kind of migrant kind of photo albums. You know.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
You know,
there's a commonality in all this.
Yeah.
I showed some pictures of my in a class situation, and this Greek fellow said, "Oh, we've got pictures like exactly like yours at home." So there's a sort of commonality with a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. But it's not, in a funny way, it's not really about the pictures, it's kind of about a certain materiality or slipperiness about all this. It's like, you know...
Like something being ephemeral or temporary.
Yeah, or something, that's how it impresses me, you know. And I'm kind of interested in the fact that you kind of just sort of build these things and the process of kind of putting it together. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, is it almost like getting into some catatonic state or something and build all these things together? Or what's the actual process of making the films themselves?
I was a bit crazy at the time. I was just sort of had all this energy. It was just, like I said, it's sort of, it comes from fire in the belly, you know. Inspiration to dancing, or like the Chinese call it. Sort of, like I said, Chris Knowles' singing melody absolutely swept me off my feet, just blew me away, and Paul Winkler's film, and other films too done at the time. I just mentioned Mary Galax, your films, Charhead and 223, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of glad that
and
it was local.
Just sort of, just sort of gives you all this energy, just sort of seeing stuff, and at the time I started when I was 19, so I had all this energy and just put it into film.
Right.
And sorry.
Yeah, I was going to make a little political statement there about the fact that, you know, it's so good that it was local work that it inspired you, you know. And one of the reasons we're doing this, and it's good to sort of show your stuff here now, is to give other people, another generation, the chance to get inspired again by something from Melbourne, you know. Yeah.
Well, I saw. Sorry to the audience that I'm covering. I'm not sort of blocking you out, but just like I have problems with my eyes sometimes. Yeah, look, I saw a lot of, like the American, what they call the avant-garde, and you know, I was introduced to that at the first Fringe Festival, and they showed programs of American avant-garde films, and none of it really kind of worked for me. I thought the Melbourne contact, I'm not sort of trying to sound like parochial or jingoistic, but I thought the Australian stuff was better. I like Maya Duran's work, like Ritual in Transfigured Time. That was just kind of stunning, surrealistic and mesmerising, and a film, Atland, you know, other stuff like that. Who's that American that, Bruce Conner?
Bruce Conner.
Report.
Hey?
There was a film called Report.
Yeah.
From the early 60s.
Found footage stuff.
That didn't really impress me. It didn't sort of connect. Couldn't connect with that. He was sort of like the big sort of filmmaker at that time. Maybe I haven't seen it. I've only seen one or two of his films.
No,
so
don't apologise about it.
Adversely, and also Stan Brakhage. What impressed me was just sort of reading about his stuff like Mothlight, and I got more out of. I haven't actually seen Mothlight, but it just sort of inspired me. Just sort of reading about his putting, you know, cutting bits of moth wings up and sticking on a 16mm film, and just showing it. I thought that was pretty.
Yeah, Pete's going to just ask a question.
Switzerland, my addiction was actually shown with Stan Brakhage in the program.
Well, Mothlight.
No, it wasn't that. I don't know what one it was.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of Stan's films.
Yeah.
So I felt
Yeah.
good about that.
Yeah.
Catches
No worries.
the eye.
Okay.
Great night.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Now,
Bye. Bye.
and
Peter.
another bookend thing, just to say, but you've also stopped making films. What? How explain that? Why did you stop?
I don't know. Just
I thought it was something to do with the digital. I mean, it didn't have the same impact on you as the
No,
materiality of the film.
I like going through photographic emulsion, and once things went like to video and digital, just sort of just lost the inspiration to do that sort of work anymore.
Right.
I like it just about fire in the belly, you know. And what else? Just sort of drifted away. I had to do other things. I shouldn't have left my lab job, because when I left the lab job, it gave me sort of stability, and I was working. And I was making the films too. So once I was silly from leaving my day job and trying to be an artist. It wasn't a good idea.
Wow.
I gave it a go, but somehow, so just the whole thing just sort of disintegrated slowly. I didn't actually stop. I just sort of found myself not making films. I was distracted by other things.
Well, sure, but
in
that's
my
also part of the fact that, you know, like these media kind of shifted history, kind of.
Well, media shifted, yeah.
As well. I mean, is it any questions?
Anyone want to fire away anything? Any questions?
Yeah, go on. Speak up loud. All right.
Okay.
Nick, I mean, just following on in part from something that Dirk tried to get from you. He was talking about, say, for instance, family album,
Yeah.
and he was talking about the fleetingness of the content, if you like, the pictures of your family and what have you, right, and the houses and what have you.
Yeah.
And I think Dirk was trying to say that, to some extent, you're more fascinated by the apparatus and by the slide holder and by the effect of little squirts and zooming and this vigorous movement than you are in the content. As in the images, the suburban context there. Similarly, in the backyard film, which you began with, the backyard film, what you're really stimulated by, like what I in terms of this fire in the belly thing, the thing that's buzzing in your mind are these blurs, and you're obviously using an old UMIG projector where you can slow it right down.
Yeah, well, that's a good point to make. To add to that is that, I mean, that film was like one roll, and he would show it at like 2 frames a second. So in this version, I got it stretch printed to kind of reenact that kind of original performative level of showing that film.
It's meant to be shown at 4 frames a second, and you couldn't sort of show it. You have to show it in the projector.
Nick, I want to hear what you think about this question of the importance to you aesthetically of the suburban milieu that many of those films came, well, not many, at least a number of those films came from. How important that is, or is it less important?
I never thought about it like that. I'm glad you sort of put it like that, Richard.
I think it is important.
Never thought.
Try and do something with that, Nick.
Sorry?
Do something with that, it is important, I think, especially in terms of a Melbourne aesthetic and the kind of suburban images that are kind of sort of in this sort of mixer there. They've kind of got an aesthetic and got a look to it that's very different to similar kind of work in terms of the way it's made that's shown internationally. I think there's something unique about it just on that level. And I'd make a crossover comment too about, Bill's work in that, which is very different to this. But a lot of that is also about bodies moving through a kind of very local Melbourne landscape. And that's something very unique. Anyway, it's not about what I think. But
maybe, Nick, a simple question to put to you is, does the content come first for you or the form? It seems to be it's the form.
I never thought about it like that. Probably the form, you're probably right.
That instinct.
Yeah, and the image is kind of subservient, you're saying?
Well,
yeah. I don't know, I never thought about it like that.
The content is there, it's your content, it's your town, it's your backyard, it's your parents, it's your life. What else could you have filmed?
Yeah, it's just the stuff around me.
Narrative terrain, or you actually start, more of the drawings and things like that.
I think, to answer maybe Richard, elaborate on what Richard said. I was just sort of exploring the camera and what its capabilities and trying to extend it as far as what I can do. I'm sort of limited by a Super 8 camera and different sorts of cameras. Like that film Backyard was made with a fairly basic sort of Sanko ES25, or sort of basic zoom or something like that. And I just try to get as much out of it as I could. So probably could say it's about, sorry, what would you ask about the sort of not content, but sort of the technique and stuff like that?
Yeah, well,
just sort of.
It's along those lines.
I'm not answering your question properly.
Well, in a way you are. It's almost like the way you're answering the question to me, it's a bit like the films. You know, you kind of move through this stuff and you get to this thing and then you're not there. And then you get there. It's kind of the way, it's almost part of your personality. The way you're talking about it reminds me of that. Any other questions?
Yes.
Obviously you enjoy your making your films, it's obvious. And one question that came to my mind, do you feel that the process is more important than the end result?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of work in your films. And
I think the end result's really important.
Audience?
The end result, you're working to an end result, and the process is just like a sort of stepping stone to it. They're both equally important. It's probably similar to what Richard asked. The process is just what I know, what I can understand, what the camera can give me, and I just sort of worked to an end goal too. I just have a sort of vision of how much the audience can take. Maybe a sort of limit. Think about the time period I'm going to do the film for.
Well, that comes back to the Super 8 group and the open screenings too, because you made sort of good use of that. And did that help you kind of work out?
Oh, for sure, what people can stand.
Yeah,
for sure. That's sort of like so I was playing ukulele for a while, sort of going up and playing ukulele in front of people, length of, just sort of what the audience can take from you, what you can give, and how the audience responds.
The average film at the Super 8 group is one roll or two rolls.
So,
3 minutes and 20 seconds. Yeah.
There's a question down there.
Yes.
Your post-production, you would have used non-linear at some point for some of those films.
Non-linear.
Non-linear is
random.
Computer.
No, I didn't use computer at all. It's really sort of prior to when computers were used, so no, it's all sort of hand done. All the editing done was with a splicer and by hand, and no, I didn't use any sort of computer stuff at all.
I didn't think you did, but it was so intricate. I don't know the name of it, but with the close-ups of the flowers and the camera was zooming in and out. So we used
flower animation.
Say it again.
The flower animation. Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes, at one stage zooming in, then sort of tended to zoom out.
Yeah. Can you give us an idea of what you did in that post? Like, were you filming off a screen, or were you?
I was using a what was I using? I was thinking of quite a number of things, and the main one was a sort of a long tube, and with the end I had the slides. It's quite a laborious process, like you're taking a single frame of slides and sort of moving the slides, so it takes ages.
And so it's all done in the camera?
A lot of it's in camera, yeah.
I mean, of course it's done in the camera, but in terms of, like, you shoot like a couple of minutes and you don't reshuffle that in any order? Do you change
some films are different, like sort of some films I used a few projectors and projected onto a wall, and I'd sort of gather images from what was on the wall, so I use a few projectors. So it's as well as using slide copiers and other sort of optical devices.
And how long would a session like that take?
I don't know, we're going 40 years ago and done this for a while.
Well, yeah, you go there and 8 hours worth, I
was working 8 hours straight, sort of thing.
Yeah, this sort of thing.
I was pretty crazy. I'd spend a lot of time doing animation. I think you did a review of early on in '83 of I think maybe one of the early films I made, and you sort of it's sort of surprised you how quick I could put together a film.
Well, there was also that stuff when you in that what was it? That place where you used to kind of do all these projections and stuff in this club.
Lounge.
The lounge.
The
was
lounge
it?
nightclub, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of almost like, you playing around, putting images together and, having loops and all this kind of stuff. It's almost like you're thinking through these things when you're doing that. I mean, the times that I saw it anyway.
Yeah, that was pretty late, sort of late in the, not the early images, but the lounge was there from 96 to 1999, so about 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah.
And that last film you saw with that sort of girl diving,
Yeah.
remember that one?
Yeah.
And the image of the blue dog, and what else was in it? And the sort of spaceman. That was sort of from a series of it's a compilation of a series of loops which I used at the lounge. Sort of a loop would be about maybe a meter of film, and sort of splice it so it just sort of goes continuously during the evening at the nightclub. And I'd have about kind of like 4 or 5 projectors sort of set up in different locations. They'd be projected against the wall.
And were they Super 8 projectors?
They were Super 8 projectors.
Yeah, okay.
A couple of times I used 16mm projectors at the Mercury Lounge, and it's just a bit awkward, like very heavy, and I was a bit worried about if a Super 8 projector falls down, it might damage someone a bit. But if a 16mm projector, a Bell and Howell, drops down from the platform and falls on someone, might kill them or something.
Well, that might not be such a bad thing. Any other questions?
I was just wondering about backyard. You said you were just sort of experimenting with this kind of pretty basic kind of camera. How many films had you been working with Super 8 very long at that point?
Oh, that was the first film. That was 82, and I did I can't remember, so long, over 40 years ago.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you thanks.
The light and I mean.
Like I was inspired, like I told you guys, inspired by one of the students there called Mary Gallick, and she's probably just made one film and just sort of like walking the camera up and down the street, like walking a dog, and just getting really sort of strong images. And I just try to do maybe not. I was inspired by that and just did some stuff. Just sort of looking at just trying out what the camera can do in the backyard. So I was sitting on the top of the garage and shooting, and around the backyard and the dog and my mum. My mum there, I was sort of really shocked. You see, she's got a really straight back. Now she's like this. I'm a sort of main carer for her, so I want to keep her out of a nursing home. So that's what keeps me busy now, being a carer.
Jim?
The films we've seen tonight, is it like, and compared to the last film you made, so what, is that a quarter, a third, the films we saw tonight, except for Brain Surge, which was made later?
The last, sorry?
No, the films we just saw, are they a third of your works, a half?
It's about a fifth.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot more, there's way more. And a lot of stuff unfinished, like from the Film Commission animation project, which is funded by the Australian Film Commission. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of half done, 3/4 done, and they didn't want to fund anymore, so we're not going to fund those sorts of films anymore, so that went down the tube. But there's a lot there that I can take to kind of completion, but I didn't. There's just so much there, and I could spend sort of like 2 or 3 lifetimes that stuff. And just sort of there's still stuff where there's a lot of stuff there to finish off. Yeah. But I haven't got time. I'm a different person now. I'm doing different things.
Well, we're glad that we could have this flashback.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And one little thing I'd like to say too, because Jim, the two of us were looking for you. We couldn't find you.
Yeah,
right?
really.
And the way we found you is that Nick Nedelkopoulos' mother got a letter for you in her mailbox.
Wow.
I mean, it was just put in the wrong mailbox.
Nick Nedelkopoulos was telling me about this just before.
Yeah, and so basically that's how we've ended up finding you.
You should have just asked Bill, he'd know.
Nick the Greek.
Something. Anyway, so there's somebody's looking after you. you know.
The Greeks.
The way we found you, you know.
Well, the Greeks looking after me. I was in a class once I think in Form 4 when we had 5 Nicks in the class. It was me, so Nick the Latvian, and the rest are all Greeks, and everyone used to think I was Greek. Because we always still hang out in safety in numbers.
Well, that's, you know, about the western suburbs too, and this whole migrant thing that's there.
Yeah, I didn't say something. I'd like to thank Karen. Is it Callum?
Yes.
Hodson? He made a really fantastic copies of the film. I've had copies of my film done. They're sort of never. They've always been never quite the same, but they sort of really impressed me. And
yeah.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to go to the screening at all because I thought, I'm going to be copies of my film, not the originals. I'd be sort of a few levels down from the original. But I was really impressed what Callum's done.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed by what he's done. It blew me away.
Well, that's sort of a part.
And
interesting, just to add to that. Just to that in a way comes out of the whole AFW thing, whereas there's the Australian Film Workshop, artist film workshops, which is kind of a lot of people are starting to get interested in processing again, and it's those kind of people that sort of Callum came out of.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, filmmaking is alive.
Yeah.
Really?
You can join the AFW and make films.
All right.
And,
I might.
and process and stuff like that. Anyway, I think I interrupted your last sentence.
What was I saying? And also, thank you for Bill for organising it, and yourself too for
encouraging.
It's a
pleasure. It's a pleasure.
And, I was going to say something else too, and I forgot my train of thought. And the cinema as well for running these sorts of films.
Yeah.
I was going to say something else too, but I just forgot.
Well, there's plenty of time. You can always, not now I'm talking about, you can always email people or phone us up.
Yeah.
I was just wondering from the audience, do people still make Super 8 films here?
Yeah, the AFW. Richard.
I can't. I don't want to look in the lights. There's a lot of people.
Monroe here, part of the AFW.
It's a stupid. Can you get Kodachrome 40 still?
No.
K40?
No. It's all colour neg these days in Super 8.
Colour neg.
Yeah.
And who manufactures it? Is that sort of from out in Europe?
There's a little company called Kodak.
Kodak still does it.
Yeah.
Never heard of it.
That's what we do for money.
But not in Coburg. I remember Kodak came to the Super 8 group in about late 80s, 89, and said we're going to close up Coburg. And sort of like the heavy executives came to, remember that? To the Super 8 group, about 3 of them. And they sort of came at the front and asking people, how many films, how many packets of film do you shoot a week? How many packets? And
well, we're artists, not industry people. It's not going to.
Anyway, they shut Coburg down, I'm sure, didn't they? That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you should go to some of the AFW.
Is that still Rochester, New York, or something? Is it?
Yeah.
And Richard Toohey.
And Richard Toohey.
Come to an AFW screening Tuesday night at Acme.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, come and see Sunshine City.
So I don't even check my emails. I haven't got a computer at home, or
All right.
I've got to check out. Ring back Bill to get the details.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.